Come on. I'm not crying, you're crying. Come on. If you know, you know. I absolutely love that commercial. I have no idea what they're selling, but I'm buying, right? One of my favorite parts of that commercial are, of course, the nosy neighbors, right? Who have no idea. They can't figure out what this old-timer's doing in his garage every day. And when they figure it out, they can't understand why someone at his age is going to spend all that time doing all that work, right? They figure for sure this guy's lost his marbles when it turns out he's found something, right? Found something of a vision for his life. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. If you don't know me, my name is Daryl, one of the pastors here at Pathway. This morning we are continuing our series called Making Change, about how to manage money and material resources to make the change you want in this world. The title of this morning's message is Whatever Murray Said. Or Tomorrow Matters, I think is what I had in mind, but that was close to what Murray said. Tomorrow Matters. In 1970, psychologist Walter Mischel at Stanford University did this experiment that is now famous. Have y'all heard of the Stanford marshmallow experiment? Some of you have the Stanford marshmallow experiment. This is how it goes. In this experiment, there was a whole bunch of children that were brought, each one into their own private room. They were seated at a table, and a single marshmallow was placed on the table in front of them. And then the researcher would give them a deal, would offer the deal, and the deal was this. If the child could resist eating the marshmallow while the researchers were away, they would be rewarded with 2 marshmallows, right? With a second marshmallow just 15 minutes later. That's it, just 15 minutes. If they ate the first marshmallow, they didn't get the second one. Do you guys get it? That's the study. Of course, the study was made famous by a viral TED Talk called Grit. Have you seen that TED Talk? Angela Duckworth, I think is her name. Fantastic. It's called Grit. You can look it up when you get home. What she suggested, the results of this study, were that the kids who could show grit and delay gratification are more likely to, win at life, right? More of a predictor of success in life than like IQ and stuff like that. That was what her interpretation of the results of this experiment. Now, unfortunately, no one has been able to reproduce or replicate the results of the study. So it seems like the truth or what the facts of the study aren't quite so simple, or maybe life just isn't as Disney as those researchers are suggesting. But that doesn't mean there isn't a lot that we can learn from the story or from the study. Like this, for instance, the children who chose the promise of the future over the momentary pleasure in the present, as you can imagine, they had to employ all sorts of different strategies to succeed. And so just imagine what the researchers were witnessing from behind the false mirror, from behind the glass as they're observing these children, right? You guys are following me? Some kids made up songs in their mind, right? They're like singing songs, looking at the thing, trying to distract themselves. Self-distraction, right? We saw all sorts of those in the study. Some kids turn their backs on the marshmallow. They're like not watching. They're covering their face, burying their eyes, doing whatever they can. Physical avoidance was a tactic that some of these kids. Some kids went full David Goggins, right? They made up motivational mantras that helped them. They would repeat this out loud. Marshmallows are for suckers, or I don't know. I'm just imagining that. But like they're making this up. Mental training, right? They're like, no, I can resist this temptation and focus my attention on the future. There was one girl, true story, in the study that after the initial temptation and the stress, she was actually able to fall asleep right on the desk. Like, I don't know what superpower that is, but it is definitely a superpower. Some of you are falling asleep right now. What's the point? What's the point of this thing? You guys know that there are things that we can do in the present that can help us flourish in the future, right? You guys know that? Yeah, Opa knows that. Opa knows that. He's out there doing squats in the garage or goblet squats or weighted extension thingies or whatever you gym bros would call that. Opa knows, though, that there are things you can do in the present that can help you flourish in the future. The other way to say that is also true, and that's failing to plan for the future can limit your capacity to flourish in the present. If you're taking notes, write that down. Daryl, do you have that right or wrong? It feels like a Back to the Future kind of paradox statement going on there. No, I chose those words intentionally. Failing to plan for the future, whether you realize this or not, is actually limiting your capacity to flourish in the present. So follow me here. Matthew chapter 25, Jesus tells what I'm sure to many of you, most of you, is a familiar story of a man going on a journey. And so he calls his servants to him and he entrusts his wealth to them. Do you guys know that story? Okay, if you don't, spoiler alert. The man in the story is Jesus. The servants in the story are all of us, okay? And the wealth that Jesus is referring to in this story is a little bit different for each one of us, but this is what I don't want you to miss about this story. The story takes place in the past and not in the future, okay? It takes place in the past. You've already been given everything you need to take your place in this story. That's what I want you to get. What matters now depends on what you decide to do with what you've been given. Does that make sense? Yeah, if you know the story, you absolutely know that. And you know the details, no doubt, of the story. To one servant, he gave 5 bags of gold, right? That sounds pretty good. To another, 2 bags of gold, and to another one bag of gold, and then he went on his journey. Just how big a bag of gold are we talking about, Daryl? That's actually a very good question. Thank you for asking. Because to understand this parable of Jesus, the parable that Jesus was telling about what life is supposed to look like in the kingdom of God, don't miss that. You need to know that what Jesus describes to his audience was a story where the guy who seems to have been given the least out of all the servants was given 20 years' wages. That's the equivalent. 20 years' wait, that's a lot of gold in this bag. The other guys, it would have instantly felt like enough that they should just quit work and retire, right? Like move full-time to somewhere with palm trees or whatever. Quit work and start enjoying life. It is the epitome of the just imagine moment. You guys remember those commercials, the lottery commercials? Just imagine what you do if you found out that you had just been given 5 bags of gold or 2 bags of gold or whatever. And that's kind of how this story, it seems, starts out. In verse 16 of Matthew 25, it says, the man who had received 5 bags of gold, wait for it, went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the one who had received 1 bag, just 1 bag, went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Remember, if you know this story, you know that the master is Jesus and the servants are all of us, and that the part you play in this story doesn't matter at all, doesn't depend on how much of the master's wealth you're given on day 1. It depends on how you steward the resources that the master has given you across a lifetime of today's. Do you guys know this story? Yeah, buckle, we've heard this story before. Good. Then you know that the first two servants, the first 2 guys, take all that the master has given them, this incredible amount of wealth, that it's like a staggering amount of wealth and blessing for someone in the servant class, if you will, to experience. They take all of it, and what do? They go back to work. They just go back to work investing and growing the master's kingdom. They probably do what they already did. They just went back to doing the same thing, investing and growing the master's kingdom. They seem to understand that when the master entrusted them with a significant amount of wealth, he also entrusted them with a significant amount of responsibility. They probably just understood that their purpose or position didn't change on that day. Just their capacity to do certain things changed, right? Their purpose and their position didn't change, just their capacity changed. You guys are following here? So what does the third guy in our story do? Well, the third guy in our story, it seems to have suffered from a crisis of vision. Yeah, a crisis of vision. In Matthew 25, after the master had fully empowered and sufficiently funded his servants. Do I need to say that again? No. Okay, then I won't. No. Some of you wanted me to. I'm not going to say that again. Yeah. Frank, others in the crowd are feeling some friction at this story. Right? You're like, it's clear, Buckle, Pastor Yarl, it's fine, it's totally clear. You might be feeling friction in this story because, what's the thing? It's hard to relate, isn't it? Because I've never been in a situation like that where just a bag of gold hits me in the head or drops into my lap and I get to decide, just imagine and decide what to do with all those kinds of things. Like we've all been through times when it didn't feel like we were sufficiently funded, much less fully empowered. That's the thing. And so it's hard. It's hard to relate. It's hard to, because of the fact that so many of us bump into limits in the financial and the material parts of our lives, it's hard to imagine what it feels like to be that good and faithful servant, right? It does. Like these guys, because there's some days we don't even know how to pay the bills. We don't know what we're going to do to make the ends meet, as they will. But I do want to challenge you. I think this is the key. If you understand your purpose, if you clarify your vision, it's going to help you steward well the resources that God has given you across a lifetime of faithfulness. I think that's the key. And where people go wrong, I think, with their finances is, first of all, they forget or they fail to understand or to clarify God's purpose for their life itself, much less the money and resources that we are entrusted to manage throughout our lives. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul is talking about money when he says, "Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness." He says, "You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God." Any farmers out there? Oh, city kids, eh? Yeah, city kids. It's okay. Listen, I'm not saying farmers get this. Farmers get this absolutely, but I believe in you, city kids. Follow along here. I believe in you. Here's what Paul wants you to know about money. The thing that farmers know is that it is God who supplies seed for the sower and bread for food, right? Farmers know this. It's God who supplies seed for the sower and bread for food. And if you manage and steward your resources well, he is going to give you more and more bread that you can eat with jams and spreads until you're diabetic. Okay, no, that's actually not what it says. It says he'll also supply and increase your store of seed so he can enlarge your harvest of righteousness. He says you'll be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, Paul says, who is going to be a sort of a middle manager for this giving thing that was happening in the churches. Through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God when Paul passed on their gifts to another more needy church. What's the point? Christians have a crisis of vision when they start to think more about the marshmallows, right? And the bread that God provides for our enjoyment today, for our benefit today, than we spend thinking about the seed that God provides for our benefit and for our enjoyment tomorrow as we live out our purpose as ambassadors and as servants of Jesus on this earth. So I hope you know that God is good. Our Father is good. He gives both kinds. Seed for the sower and amazing, like sourdough bread for the eater, right? He gives both kinds, bread and seed. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard in a world of wealth where no matter where you go, you always seem to be standing in front of a buffet of some sort, right? A buffet of stuff to choose from, to consume. Good eats are always right there, readily available and within what we think is our means. It's hard not to lose sight of God's vision for your life, right? The vision that God wants you to steward in your life. I was watching a video from a prominent counselor where he describes a question that he asks to couples who come to him in his office with some sort of trouble or conflict or whatever. The question is this: how will you know when you're living your dream? So just imagine that some of you are like, maybe you have been in that situation where you've had like a season of conflict with your spouse or someone important to you. So he asks that question: how will you know when you're living the dream? What does it look like when that problem that you feel so heavily gets fixed? When the struggle gets fixed? What does that look like in your marriage? What does the marriage you want look like when you come home from work? Or on a Saturday morning when you wake up and you've got a whole day that you could spend together? What does it look like in the kitchen or in the living room or in the bedroom? What does it look like when things get hard? What does it look like when you've made it through those hard times and things are back to being great? What's the point? How will you know when you're living your dream? So I want you to do that same exercise about your finances. If you're married, do it with your spouse. If you're not, sit down by yourself. But then I want you to phone a friend and say, hey, can we meet over coffee and I can tell you about this vision that I have for my resources, this plan that is taking shape. Why would you do this? Because purposelessness kills potential. Purposelessness kills potential. That is very true for money. And so it's important to clarify your purpose from time to time, right? It's important. How will you know when you're living your dream? How many of you know that the life of your dreams will become a total letdown, and for some of you will become a total nightmare if you forget the vision of the Master, the vision the Master gave you from Matthew 25 or Matthew 28 or Matthew 5 and 6. If you forget all the vision that God has given you for your life and you don't give it thought in your day-to-day, that life of your dreams is never going to happen. It's going to be a letdown in the future. Does that make sense? How many of you know that the life of your dreams has to be built, so I'll say it this way, intentionally, proportionally, strategically, and sometimes sacrificially in our waking hours? Of course you do. How will you know when you're living your dream? One more thing. Remember, the dream of a follower of Jesus looks different than the dream of people who are otherwise attached, right? It's supposed to look different than the dream of folks who are otherwise unattached. Why? Because servants of the Master are stewards of the Master's resources. That's Matthew 25. That's the story that we read, the parable of the talents. Servants of the Master, stewards of the Master's resources. So what do I mean when I say that? Stewardship is about managing not just our finances, but about everything that God has entrusted to us. That's stewardship. It challenges us to be faithful. Being a steward means I have to try and be faithful in both small and large matters. Yeah, small stuff, the big stuff, and the small stuff. Wise stewards involve planning for the future, while taking care of the important stuff in the present. It's both of those things. That's good stewardship. And don't miss this one. I hope you know, generosity is the prime directive. It is. It's the first purpose of the life of a follower of Jesus. How do I know that? Because God so loved the world that he gave. The first impulse and instinct of one who loves, like God loves us, is a life of generosity. And now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of what? Seed. Will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You'll be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. Stewardship is about way more than money. It is. It's certainly about money. Being a steward. Matthew 25, it's certainly about managing money, but it's about way more than us. So think of it in the other way. The same God, our good God, supplies seed and bread in our time. That's right. So when you're thinking about the time that you have, the decisions you make about how you're going to spend your time, I want you to think of it in terms of seed and bread. Seed and bread and our talents, right? God has given us gifts and talents and experiences, all of this stuff that make us our uniqueness, both seed and bread. That means some of it is for our enjoyment and our delight. And God, as a good father, delights when his kids have fun. It's for delight, but it's not just for our delight. It's also seed to be sown, to benefit and to bless others as well. Seed and bread in our talents. Seed and bread in our treasures or our resources. So let's ask a thought question, a thought experiment. When you only work and never eat, what happens? I don't know, Terrell. That has never happened to me. I know, neither me. But just imagine, if you only work and never eat, what happens? You waste away and you die. Like, you'll die. Some of you are like, I've been burnt out, and it feels like you're just running out of everything. You're wasting away. Some of you have been there. Well, okay, thought experiment. What happens when you only eat and never work? Sounds amazing, right? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You get sick. You get sick, metaphorically, spiritually. You get physically very sick, and then you die. If you sow what's seed, you grow what's good. If you eat what's seed, you'll get sick, and sick is not good. I want you to think of this. If you're consuming what God's given and intends you to be sowing, then you're going to have all sorts of problems, sickness in parts of your life, spiritual, physical sickness. So the question again is, how will you know when you're living your dream? Just imagine that dream. What am I going to do with this? All these blessings that God has given me in my life. What is that? How will you know when you're living in the sweet spot? What are the stories that you're going to be excited to share when the Master returns? You'll be like, Jesus, just come over here. I gotta show you my kids. Jesus, come over here. I want you to come to our church. Look at what we've built, Jesus, with all of this. And you ask yourself, is there anything that you need to start doing differently today to better build the life of your dreams for this time next year? So think this time next year, and then think, what about 10 years from now? What about the last day of your life? What about the first day of your life after this life? Some of us struggle with a crisis of vision. So we need to figure out this crisis of vision. Some of us struggle with a crisis of planning. We get so caught up thinking about the marshmallow in front of us today that we fail to consider our future present selves, right? And then something happens where we experience that moment of reckoning, I call it. The Germans call it that. When you go to a restaurant, you say, Die Rechnung bitte. You ask for the reckoning. You ask for the bill. There's a bill coming, folks. I like how they say that. There's going to be a moment of reckoning after the meal that you've been enjoying. What is that? What kind of reckoning are you talking about? Like a diagnosis, right? A diagnosis. When you go to your doctor and he says, Bucko, your A1C is a little higher than it's supposed to be, it's the moment of reckoning, thinking, oh, all that bread and all those carbs maybe haven't been, all those Cadbury Easter eggs. I'm pointing at you now. It's the time of year. You got to be careful how many Easter eggs you're consuming. Maybe that's the moment of reckoning. It could be the death of a loved one that startles us and you think, man, I wish I had spent my time differently. Sometimes it's when your kids grow up and they move out of house and you're like, this is amazing. No, that's not what you think. You think, it's amazing, but I miss them and I like them and I wish they'd come visit more, they'd call more. For some of us, it's going to be just that moment when the master returns. We don't want to lose sight of that theological notion of the imminent return of Christ, that he could come back and when, at any point, and when he comes back, there will be some conversations. So we get caught up, right? We get focused on the tyranny or the temptations of the present, and we lose sight of the treasures that need attending for our future selves to enjoy. And it is enjoyment that I'm promising for your future. Proverbs 21:20 says it this way: the wise have wealth, but fools spend everything they have. You're like, oh, is that what I'm doing wrong? Yeah, the wise have wealth, but fools spend everything they have. So what's the challenge of this proverb? Just do something today that your future self will thank you for. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. Actually, my favorite piece of ancient wisdom for this is that prayer from Psalm 90. I talk about it a lot. So just, if you've heard this before, it's good, but it's why, because I talk about it a lot. It says, teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So if we apply that verse to the stewardship of our time, right? Everyone agrees that what you do with your time is important. Of course, that's easy, right? What you do with your time is important. So every day, do something important with your time. That's how you apply it. Every day you think, I got all this time. What am I going to do with this time? Do something important, something your future self will thank you for. Oprah knew this. Everybody's favorite Oprah knew this. That's why he was out in the garage doing goblet squats and whatever those things were. This psalm sits at the intersection of faith and real life. God, teach us to number our days. We gotta number our days. We have to be more intentional with how we're living our lives so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. The psalmist knew, the author of the Proverbs knew, this is how wisdom is forged in our lives. I wonder if this guy was like our Opa and that there was something that he was looking forward to in his life, right? Like Opa couldn't wait for that moment and he was going to get ready when he could lift up his grandchild and the tears start to flow in everybody because they realized he had been living with purpose, but they didn't know. But he'd been living with purpose for a long time to get to that moment of joy. He decided, I'm gonna get to that stupid alarm clock now so I can get to that moment of joy, right? I wonder if there was something that he was looking forward to, the psalmist, or something that he was trying to grow past, right? Something he's like, this isn't how I want to spend my life. This isn't the frustration or the hardship that I wanted, so I've got to find a way to grow past this thing. And so he reached out to God for help, and then he changed his habits. I encourage you every day to pray and to plan in every area of your stewardship. Some of us have a crisis of vision. Some it's a crisis of planning. But some of us, it's just a crisis of execution, right? It's just the crisis of execution. We got a perfect plan, Daryl. And then we just don't execute. That's it. That's for a lot of us. It's execution. So this might be hard for you to imagine, but like a long time ago, Luana and I were young. And back when we were young, and our kids were young and still in elementary school, parents, this is free, we were living in Orangeville, and I discovered that the brand of yogurts, follow me here, that my kids liked packed in their lunches, the yogurts that we would get at the grocery store that was closest to our house, you could also get said yogurts at the grocery store that's across town. And in Orangeville, across town is like a 10-minute drive. okay? Exact same brand of yogurts, because our kids are discerning, have discerning palates. The same yogurts, but across town they're 35 cents cheaper per unit. And I know what you're thinking, Daryl, this is a story about 35 cents. No, you forget. I've got like 1 million kids, and they go to school a lot, so I did the math, the pastor math, but still math. 3 kids, 5 days of school, 50 billion weeks in a year, and all this kind of stuff. If I switched stores for just 1 year, I could save enough money for a flight to Jamaica at that time. No, this is true. I wouldn't have enough money to bring Luana with me, but I get to go to Jamaica. The wise have wealth, but fools spend all that they have. It doesn't say that the rich have wealth, does it? It says the wise have wealth, but the fools spend all. I just think that some of us have maybe gotten out of practice keeping track of where our money goes, right? I think it's a tracking problem for some of us. For some of us, it's definitely a spending problem, not a tracking problem. It's a spending problem. If, for instance, not that I'm picking on you, but Shane brought it up last week. If every time you go to the Stuff Mart for eggs and milk, you come home with an electric toothbrush, right? Or a 47-pack of socks. If every time you're going to Costco, you're coming back with all this stuff you didn't intend it, you're like, Bucko, this is getting a little personal now. Back off my Costco runs now. You want to get personal? Okay, we're going to get personal. Also, back when we lived in Orangeville, I was working away in my basement office, and we got a call from the town of Orangeville. We were like, uh-oh, you're trying. And it was this call from the town of Orangeville was so that they could tell me that I had a problem with one of my toilets. And I'm like, back off here, buddy. I don't have a problem with my toilets. Like, I personally scrub that toilet at least once a month, and I always put the seat down, okay? So back off. That wasn't, of course, our problem. This is a true story. The guy from the town could tell by our water use that there was a problem with one of our toilets running. Yeah, right? The little leak in the flapper was letting just a tiny bit of water to leak down and out the drain, slowly leaking in the toilet, so that every few minutes the ball cock would trip the fill valve doohickey thing. Some of you are shaking your heads like Daryl needs a plumber more than I think. No, it would. And it was only every 5 or 10 minutes, all of a sudden the toilet would fill back up again. And because I hadn't paid attention to the little leak in the flapper, if you know, this is a $6 part at the hardware store, $6, that's it. I had used an extra $75 in water that month because I ignored that. Some of us, it's a problem of execution. Yeah, you've got a purpose for your wealth, your resources, everything God's given you. You know you've got a plan. You're like, this is what I'm going to be a good steward. This is what I'm going to do. But you've got just a little leak in your Tim Hortons budget, for instance, right? What's the leak? Tim Hortons budget? Yeah, I know. You don't have a Tim Hortons budget. If you don't even have a budget, that means it's all leak, okay? It's all leak. No limits means all leak. And I think sometimes the wise have wealth because they're good at tracking. And they're good at trimming extra, or I'm going to say it, wasteful spending in favor of more purposeful spending. Daryl, like Tim Hortons, listen, I'm not dissing. Tim Hortons is amazing. I'm Canadian, elbows up. But honestly, stay with me. Some of us have a Tim Hortons-sized spending problem. It's not a big deal. It's just a Tim Hortons-sized spending problem. And the town is never going to call you about that problem. Tim Hortons will never call you and say, I think you've been spending a little too much. You've been rolling up too many rims there, Mr. Buckle. They will never call. Some of us, here's the problem. I hope you don't feel like I'm picking on you right now. Some of us are far too blessed for such mediocre and silly stuff. Yeah, it's not the It's not the fast food cups in my car that betray me. It's all the toys in my garage that are collecting dust. The toys that I bought with good intentions but rarely use. Yeah, those are the things that represent my hole in the ground. How about you? Some of you, maybe not. Some of you have been sitting so politely through this message, and this is why. It's because you don't ever notice. You don't ever feel your tracking problems or your spending problems because you are blessed, never stressed, because by God's grace, you've been given lots to go around. And I am not picking on you, and I'm not criticizing you. Why? Because I know that you are grateful and you are so generous. I don't know if you know this, but I take a paycheck from my work here, and I know it's because of the generosity of the people who are sitting here looking at me, waiting for me to offend them. I'm not gonna, I hope. You are grateful and you're generous because you know that by all accounts, you are quite comfortably situated. What am I saying? I'm just saying that today, my friend, is your lucky day. Because today, and for one day only, I have an incredible offer that I'd like to share with you. I would like to offer you a chance to trade some of your many marshmallows for a treasure of inestimable value, a harvest of righteousness, if you will, enjoyed by people who live a life of purpose. And I'm not picking on those of you who are comfortably situated or who know that they're blessed in this life. I want to talk to all of us right now. We all need to practice faithful stewardship, whether it feels tight at the end of the month or whether we're in a season or a situation where we feel blessed. We all need to practice faithful stewardship. So I want to leave you with a challenge. This is the challenge for anybody who wants to try it. And when I say that, it's for anybody who wants to try it. You get to choose. I want you to go home today and convert some of your assets. Yes, convert some of your assets. I know that some of you are experiencing some lack in this area of finances, and so this whole message has been a little bit uncomfortable. This might feel, even what I'm going to suggest might feel like a stretch to you right now. And if that's you, I do want to say, if you email Shane or I, we have people in our community who have been especially trained to help folks create budgets and navigate income taxes and different things like that. We've got people that will help you free of charge, no cost. If you're interested in asking for help, just go ahead and drop me an email, drop Shane an email, and we will connect you with these people who are trained and help you get your feet under you or to feel that peace in place of the stress that you've been feeling in that area. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have stuff in your garage that you could do this too. So this is the challenge. Almost anyone can do it. Go home and convert some of your assets. What do you mean? I want you to find one item that you bought to be bread. What does that mean? Something that you bought for your own enjoyment or benefit, and I want you to sell it. That's right, Facebook Marketplace. I want you to sell it. If you don't know how to sell it, I want you to think, who do I know that could use this thing and give it away? Why? Why would we do this? Matthew 6:19 says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust or moth and mice destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and mice can't destroy, where thieves can't break in and steal. Find something that gathers more dust than it does give you blessing right now. I know you bought it to be a blessing. You bought it for enjoyment. But if you're honest, if you know it's just collecting dust right now, pull it out, dust it off, and sell it, and then give the proceeds away. I'm not asking you to give them to the church. Give them away to someone. We were talking about this in a life group. Get a bunch of Tim Hortons gift cards and put them in your car, because every time you get off the highway, you see people at the corner, and you could give them a little Tim Horton gift card and be a blessing in their life. You could convert bread into seed and change somebody's life, maybe. So that's what I'm asking you to do. Turn your extra bread back into seed and be a blessing. Why? Because good stewards are great at this. They are. Good stewards are just great at this. You come to their house, and they say, come on in, I've got some cookies here. And you're like, what? How did you know to bake cookies? Because they're always ready to be a blessing in someone's life. Good stewards are great at this. And the more blessed you are, the more bread you have, the more opportunities that you have to convert your assets and so blessing into the lives of the people around you. And I would love for us to catch a vision for this. It's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. Jesus and science are clear on this. Like, absolutely, 100% clear on this. It is more blessed to give than to receive. It is, and I want that for your life. Let's catch a vision for this. Final thoughts. Making changes like this in any area of our life, but certainly this is going to take time. Andy Stanley wrote a book called The Principle of the Path, which says that it is your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. Do I need to say that again? It's your direction, the direction you're going, more than your intention, that will determine your destination. That applies to a lot of areas of our lives, but certainly stewardship. To realize the savings of your yogurts takes time. It's going to take time for you to feel the change in your habits and your body. To finally feel that peace replacing what used to be anxiety. Why? Because you made a decision to make your coffee at home and skip the drive-through line, and you're going to do that for a whole year or for a whole quarter or for a couple months. It's going to take time before you realize that, before you find the margin in your material stuff. It's going to take perseverance and time. Rekindling the flame of that vision when you first gave your life to Jesus and said, Jesus, I want you to have it all. It's going to take time and it's going to take work. And for some of you, your next step might be to say, you know what, I've been here and I've prayed those prayers for Jesus, and this church has meant so much to me, but maybe it's time for you to take that step and start giving regularly to the work of the church. Making this kind of change takes time and intention, it takes planning, and it might even take what feels sometimes like sacrifice. I'm telling you, though, that's where the magic happens. It is. That's where the magic. It's actually what Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. What am I talking about? Compound interest. That's what he said. Daryl, compound interest? Sure, this is what it looks like. When one person catches a vision for their life in the future, or their church in the future, or their community in the future, and then goes to work building it one step and 1 mile, 1 coffee, $1, 1 seed, 1 sacrifice, 1 gift at a time. Row by row they plant. Brick by brick they build. They grow a garden. They build a community where people know, where Christians are known by their love and Jesus is known only as Lord. This kind of faith in the future inspires all of us. When one person catches that vision, it inspires all of us. But they know the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. So what's the point? Let's just do something today that our future self will thank us for. Let's pray.